Mike had never heard birds sing so loudly, shielding his eyes against a sun that was playing hide and seek with the cloud filled sky. Mike looked at the trees that encircled the clean white lines of the Child Development Center. The massive oaken pines appeared as if they were standing guard over the building and its precious occupants. The birds Mike the birds Mike could hear were hopping from branch to branch in the trees. Mike realized he never really paid a lot of attention to the birds in his real life. He heard the ones in his dreams every night, but he ever listened to their songs during the day? Not really. Well, he was going to start now. I'm going to start doing a lot of things, he decided, but right now he needed to pick up his sister. It took Mike a few minutes to get into the building and make it down the long hallway to the active center. He was still limping. Most. The limp was caused by a healing gouge in his calf, but he had a couple hairline cracks in his bones, too, in his tibble and fubal. Not big enough for a cast, his doctor had told him. They heal on their own. The rest of Mike's injuries were healing, too. He needed a lot of stitches, and for a couple weeks he looked like he had been himself inked with splodges of black and blue and purple. But 3 weeks out, the bruises were mostly faded. His stitches were gone. He was on the mend. The sound of laughter buried Mike along. He looked ahead and saw Dr. Lillian standing in front of him in the active center window. They exchanged a wave, and Mike was at her side a few seconds later. Mike grinned at Dr. Lillian and looked through the window. Inside a colorful play space, a group of 6 kids were in the midst of a rowdy game of tag, and, to Mike's total joy, Abby was one of those kids. His sister, wearing her favorite red overalls, was bopping and weaving to avoid getting caught. She had some mad moves, running from animatronics, and a serial killer rabbit had honed her escape skills, and thankfully, it didn't seem to have dampened her spirit at all. Just the opposite right now. As she did an impressive drop and roll that got her out of range of the little boy with a flat top buzz cut, Abby grinned bigger and wider than he ever seen. Abby shot to her feet and leaped away from the little over red-headed girl. She spotted her brother and gave him a brief wave. Then she was off again, sprinting to the far side of the room. It's really extraordinary, Dr. Lillian said. The turn she's taken these past few weeks. She seems almost happy. Mike turned to look at Dr. Lillian. The doctor tucked a lock of white hair behind her ear as she nodded. Then she glanced down the leg he favored. One of these days, she said, you'll have to tell me what happened. She pointed at that leg, and how you got that limp. Mike smiled, but he didn't agree to spill the beans. Mike and the doctor watched Abby in silence for a few seconds. Then Dr. Lillian asked casually, and still no word of Jane? Mike shook his head. He's been ready for this question, and he answered it just as casual as Dr. Lillian had asked it. You know, he said, I think my aunt has finally decided to move on. I mean, she kinda did, Mike thought. Mike flipped on the car's turn signal. The creaky cling, cling held into sound his squeaky brakes as he maneuvered the old joggly around the corner. A belch of exhaust wafted in through Mike's open window. He gave the dashboard of front of his steering wheel a pat. The car's idiosyncrasies had started to amuse him more than annoy him. Mike looked over at Abby, who had her feet pressed against the glove box. Her sketchpad had propped into her knees. She was drawing something Mike couldn't see. It's really not that hard, Mike said. Abby said nothing. I asked you a very simple question, Mike pushed, to which there is a simple answer, pizza or spaghetti. Abby held up her drawing pad. Mike flicked a look at it. She's drawn a platter of pizza and spaghetti. I told you, I want both, he said. Mike said. I guess we're at an impasse. Abby gave Mike a pretend glare. Then she half grinned, and she applied a colorful pencil into her drawing. She made a weeping motion to the pencil. Then she raised the pad to him to see. Mike glanced over at the pad. Abby had circled the spaghetti. Mike returned his attention to the road. Done, he said. Abby smiled. She flipped the page on the drawing pad. Mind if we make a stop first? Mike asked. Nope, Abby said, concentrating on her new drawing. Mike lowered himself in the high-bracket tan villain chair that was padded next to the safety rail hospital bed. He breathed swallowing because he hated the soap of odor in the ICU, bleach and medications and rubber and urine and hospital food. Why did all the hospital food smell like overcooked green beans? The ICU beds were all occupied, so the U-shaped cluster of a glass fronted enclosure was filled with sounds. Mike could hear the rhythmic pumping of ventilators, the beep of monitors, the scrap of equipment being moved, the scuff of soft skull nurse shoes, and a consistent murmuring of voices, some soft, some loud. Vanessa's critical care cabin was on the outside wall of the area, so the sun still covering a puffy white cloud put a soft hand on warmth against Vanessa's cheek. If only Vanessa could feel it, or maybe she could. One of the nurses had told Mike that even when patients were in coma, they were sometimes aware of what was going on around them. You can talk to her, the ponytailed nurse had told Mike. Mike leaned forward and looked at Vanessa's pale eyelids. Other than the top of her cheek, this was all he could see of Vanessa's face. The rest of it was obscured with the ventilator that was keeping her alive while her body recovered from the massive blood loss. Surgeons had repaired her wounds, but her own system had to do the rest. So the big news is, Mike said, I finally got a new job. Not as exciting as the last one, but I'm thinking that's probably a good thing. Mike chuckled briefly, but the sound of his own amusement didn't fit with the other sounds of the ICU. Mike was silent. He was lying on the job. In truth, he was very excited about his apprentice-level position in a construction firm that was building a big complex on the edge of town. The foreman, who had set past his own, didn't have a problem of taking a chance on Mike. He even told Mike that he could use company tools and scrap wood to work on his own projects off hours. Mike thought he might take himself some bedroom furniture. Maybe Mike could tell Vanessa about his new job another day. For now, he said, Look, I know we have a lot to talk about. There are some big things I still need you to explain. But I've made peace with a lot of what happened, and I know that certain decisions you made, well, you weren't in control of them. And I know that when it mattered the most, you were there for me and Abby. Mike thought of Abby's description of all that happened to Vanessa when he's been out of it. He immediately shut his mind down. He didn't need to linger on the ugliness. I don't think either of us would be here today without you, Mike told Vanessa. Mike reached out and took a soft hand that lay on top of the thin white hospital bed. Then, a simple touch, a current of emotion rushed through him. So many feelings. Which was the most dominant? Sadness, anger, regret, caring, maybe something even more than that? Mike couldn't dissect his own psyche. He was not used to notions like this. He's been running on such limited settings, grief and regret, for so many years that the new sensations were going to take some time getting used to. Mike squeezed Vanessa's hand. Heal up, Vanessa. His voice was croaked by her name. He cleared his throat. Get strong. Then we'll talk. Mike got up and left the room without glancing back. He tucked all the emotions away for a later time as he investigated the breached wall hospital corridors that get back to the Carrier Yellow Hall lobby. There he found Abby right where he left her, in a plush blue chair within eyeshot of the young brunette receptionist, who had agreed to keep one eye on her sister while he was gone. Abby was practically drawing when Mike walked up to her. Mike gave the receptionist a wave and thanks, and he looked down at Abby. Abby tucked away her drawing pad and stood. Did you tell her I said hi? She asked. Yeah. Mike gave Abby a quick hug. Let's go home. Mike looked out of the living room window as he took the seat next to Abby on the kitchen table. The sun, possibly tired from its day of games of the clouds, seemed to be going down faster than usual. It had put up a dust PJ, and now it looked like an orange ball. The bottom of the ball had already dipped behind the hills. Mike looked down his plate. Another ball, a meatball, was sliding on the top of the mound of spaghetti. It rolled to the edges of the plate and stopped. Mike looked at Abby. She was toying with her fork, turning the handle around and around on the folded napkin. Her gaze was what focused on the despairing sun. Everything okay? Mike asked. I was just thinking about my friends. You mean Freddy and Chica and the others? She nodded. They're all alone. And no one takes care of them anymore. Abby pulled her gaze from the sun setting and looked at Mike. Can we visit them sometimes? No way in hell, Mike thought. His thoughts must have been clear in his face because Abby looked down at her food. She sighed. Mike thought about the promise he made to her at Freddy's. She was going to do better. He meant it. So if it meant that much to Abby... Mike touched Abby's arm. Then she looked up. He made sure his expression was neutral. You never know what can happen, he said. Abby smiled. She stopped twirling the fork. Mike noticed that the glass next to her napkin was empty. I forgot the milk, he said, jumping up. Mike stepped to the fridge. He opened its door and grabbed a carton of milk. As he closed the door, his glance glanced on Abby's latest drawing, secured next to the door handle by the smiley-faced magnet. The drawing was of Abby, Mike, Vanessa, and the 4 animatronics. They were all inside the table fort at Freddy's. Feeling his lip tip upward for the slightest of a smile, Mike turned away from the drawing. He returned to the table and pour Abby some milk. The milk splashed into the glass, making a clunk clunk sound that acted as a catalyst, snatching Mike from the prison and plucking him back to his childhood. In his mind, he was watching milk filled in a different glass, his own glass. Mike looked up from the glass, and he saw his mom set down the milk carton and sit across from him. She smiled at him and lifted both arms to join hands with Garrett and Mike's dad. At the same time, Garrett and Mike's dad took Mike's hands, joined. The family bowed their heads. Abby blinked and he was back in the present. Mike reached for Abby's hand and she took it. Sharing a brief smile, they bowed their heads and closed their eyes. Abby spoke, "Thanks for the food and everything else, amen." Short and sweet, Mike thought. She squeezed Abby's hand, but he didn't let go. Financially, Mike wandered briefly, but the tip-top of the setting sun, almost gone now, was seeing it as he peeked through the window. He imagined the scene was the son's perspective, brother and sister, holding hands, head bows, holding the moment because it was a perfect one. For this moment, Mike and Abby were happy. The blond boy moved through Freddy's like he was giving a tour to nobody. Caught in the shadows upon shadow, the rooms hunkered with the prestige wall of the old restaurant, the empty lobby. Posters were still on glass, the long hallway with more glassless posters. The security office, its monitors lit up with no one watching them. The kitchen, all shiny and still. The parts and service room, a mess of robot parts and empty metal chairs. And of course, the dining room, where the animatronics stood rigged on the barely lit stage. Everything was totally quiet. The blond boy went down the back hallway. All the doors along the hall were closed, except for one, at the very end. The blond boy went through the door into the small, barely more than closed-sized room. He looked at where the light from the hallway landed on the room's bare, dusty checkerboard floor, and beyond that to the yellow rabbit slumped in the corner. The rabbit was inclined against the midway cement back wall. Not a rabbit, a man in a horrible costume. A twitching man, sponged in a massive spread of blood. It was rust-colored, dry blood that was stuck on the floor, maybe forever. The boy watched the man in the doorway, taking satisfaction in the man's suffering. The boy wanted the suffering to go on for as long as the stain on the floor, maybe longer. The boy backed out of the room. He closed the door, sealing the yellow rabbit in the black prison.